So at the last minute, Capcom boned over PC users looking forward to playing co-op in Resident Evil Revelations 2. But some modders found a way to add it back into the game. Combine that with the fact there's now a pretty damn good fan remake of Resident Evil 2, and it's official. We're better at being Capcom than Capcom is. Are you guys okay over there? Are you eating right? Are you sleeping well? Because you need to get your shit together. What is up, Internet? I am Rick Wolf, the guy that's 1K away from having a really upsetting name, and you're watching The Cynicist, a show that probably only you know about. Let's complain about Resident Evil Revelations 2. Resi-E's Revelations 2 is the billionth video game, movie, book, or religious tone to adopt the subtitle Revelations, and is the first entry to star Claire Redfield in a very long time, and the first entry to star Barry Burton in an even very, very longer time. While it has no direct story connection to the original Revelations, it plays essentially the same as the original with its over-the-shoulder modern third-person shooter setup, just like Resident Evil 6. Something that I can't argue works great on a technical level, but at least for me, it has sucked a lot of the cinematic atmosphere out of the franchise. I miss those big dramatic camera angles from back in the day, man. I loved Resident Evil 4 and all, but ever since that camera got fixed over the shoulder and the environments went polygonal instead of pre-rendered, I'm just constantly reminded I'm playing a video game. Those gorgeous environments in the remaster are so much more immersive. Anyway, you start off in control of Claire, who works for yet another newly introduced anti-bioterrorism organization called Terra, because it just wouldn't be a new Resident Evil game without a goofy new organization to not care about. Claire gets abducted along with Barry's emo goth whatever I have daddy issues daughter, Moira, and locked away in some kind of torture dungeon facility in Russia. And both Claire and Moira wake up with evil talking Fitbits on their wrists.
I am the Overseer. Fear requires an audience and a conductor.
Is this Jill? Did Chris put you up to this? So Claire shoots and Moira shines a flashlight because her dad loves guns, so she of course has to hate them, or some overwrought plot point we'll find out about later. How desperate for employees is Terra if they're hiring skater chicks who refuse to use guns? What's Moira's job there, keeping the staff up to date on all the latest internet memes? Then you'll trace Claire and Moira's footsteps when you take control of Barry, who's paired with a little girl named Natalia, who can throw bricks and see through walls just like Ellie in The Last of Us, and see items that Barry's too nearsighted to see, I guess. It is cool to give the characters totally different paradigms like that, but if you're looking to team up with a buddy and just mow down enemies as part of the campaign story, RE5 or RE6 style, you're going to be disappointed. One of you is playing as a pretty little girl in a pretty little dress. Here's another oddity about the co-op in Revelations 2. As of right now, there's no online co-op. There's just couch co-op. Now, for me, a guy that's been bitching for years about the death of couch co-op, it's all aces. But if your gaming buddies live in Jamaica, you are out of luck. I know it simply can't be helped because of the aspect ratio games are designed to run at now, but this is yet another split-screen experience with a ton of wasted screen space. I'm probably the only one who cares, but that dead space just drives me crazy. Unintentional Dead Space pun is unintentional. But down to it, the gameplay is well enough. The controls are really sharp and really responsive, and I feel like they're way tighter than the Evil Within's controls, which kind of felt like you were underwater the entire time. And blasting enemies, I have to admit, is extremely fun. All in all, it's a pretty damn solid game in terms of playability. I also have a gripe with the enemies. Ever since RE4, Capcom's gotten a serious case of kinemorphophobia. I get it, you want to try new things, you're afraid of getting stale or repeating yourself. Zombies really are played out. But some things just go together, man. Zombies in Resident Evil are like PB&J, spaghetti and meatballs, or hookers and blow. I would much rather be blasting zombies than these weird-ass 80s Toxic Avenger mutant-looking dudes, giant rat monsters, and Lord Humongous and Pyramid Head's love child. I'm sorry, these enemies are just comical to me. There are slow-moving, lumbering, zombie-like enemies, but they're all swampy and slimy with exposed skulls, and they just feel like rejects from Planet Terror. It's just not the same without these guys. Then again, at least there aren't ridiculous fish creatures or zombies that shoot at you and then grow beanstalks out of their heads. Another upside is that this guy and his hair are nowhere to be found. Seriously, Capcom, this dude counts for at least as many nails in Resident Evil's coffin as RE5 and 6. Did your character designer go through a midlife crisis and start listening to Culture Club again? I'll be honest, 9 times out of 10, I give 0 fucks about non-story multiplayer or survival modes. What can I say? If there's no narrative, even a mediocre one, there's just nothing there for me. But if you can hang with just running around and killing things just to kill them, awesome. I'm jelly. I tend to need a little bit more than a shooting gallery to be entertained. But Revelation 2's raid mode is one of those rare occasions where I actually found myself really enjoying what a deathmatch style game mode can offer. You can level up the available characters, unlock new ones, mod and upgrade weapons, and there's a whole slew of awesome stages to rage out in. Another positive I have to touch on is while the story is the usual bland bioterrorism plot, for once there actually is some flair and self-awareness in the dialogue. Twice so far, the game's poked fun at Barry's atrocious dialogue in the original Resident Evil. Major props for adding some sorely needed humor to the franchise, finally. One thing that did really disappoint me though, and maybe I just missed this detail pre-release, but Revelations 2 is being released episodically, and as of right now, you can only download episode 1, which means you'll get about 4 or 5 hours out of it, if that, and then you'll be done if you're not going to tackle raid mode. Sad face. I'm giving Resident Evil Revelations 2, or at least its first episode, 5/8 of a life meter. It's a solid play with great controls, fun gameplay, and a shockingly deep raid mode. But as usual, the story's nothing thought-provoking. Capcom chopped out the co-op on the day of release for PC users. The enemies are extremely cheesy, and do not buy into the hype Capcom puts out there about this being classic Resident Evil. This is classic Resident Evil. Just because you start the player off with no ammo and a combat knife does not mean you're going back to the serious survival horror roots. No A for effort, Capcom. That's an F for phoning it in. That doesn't really work, does it? I guess I phoned it in. I get an F too. And just to give you a little insight into the, in my opinion, backwards way Capcom thinks before we leave, one of Capcom's producers, whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, was recently quoted as saying that they like to experiment with the main numbered titles in the Resident Evil franchise and let Revelations retain that classic Resident Evil vibe. That awkward moment when you realize your business model is completely bass-ackwards. Probably alienate a lot fewer people if you do experimental stuff in the spin-off installments. You used to do that, and most of the time they were awful, or at the very best forgettable. Resident Evil Survivor, I'm looking at you. But that was fine because there were spin-off releases and nobody really cared. No harm, no foul. Why in the name of the Blue Bomber would you adopt that mentality for your main bread and butter series? Why not keep giving your fans what they almost unanimously want in the main series and go do your little Call of Resident Duty shooter experiments as little offshoots? Good news is Resident Evil HD Remaster is Capcom's #1 best-selling digital title, so maybe we'll see things start to creep back to those old glory days. Capcom's pretty out of touch with its fans, but dollar signs are like a jumbo Sharpie under the nose. Oh, money. Now, I don't know if we'll ever get to doing a proper playthrough of it here on the Agony Wolf Media channel, but if you just can't wait, I highly recommend watching Harshly Critical's Let's Play of it. Harshly Critical, for my money, is the best Let's Player on YouTube. His commentary is smart, funny, and the man knows his survival horror. Follow this link to check out his playthrough of Revelations 2, and follow this link to check out his whole channel.
Do it. Do it now.
Oh, and I finally had some extra cash to upgrade to current-gen consoles. And I'll give you a little hint as to which direction I went. You could say, X marks the spot. You could say, I do like being put in a box. And you could say, I look out for #1. I got a PlayStation 4. If you like this video, give that subscribe button a shit and don't talk any hit. Wait.